So in today's presentation, you're going to learn about how to collect data and evidence of environmental violations by industry, how to document health effects from environmental exposures, and how to report violations to the proper authorities effectively. And so this question of where you're joining the webinar from, again, it's great to see in the chat. And this is us. This is the welcome slide. Debbie Larson, the medical outreach coordinator for the Environmental Health Project, joins us. Julian Graber, the executive director of Protect PT. And again, if you've just tuned in, my name is Ryan. I'm part of the Halt the Harm Network operations team. What we do, what Halt the Harm does, and why I'm hosting this webinar is we provide services to a network to support people fighting the oil and gas industry. And so those services could be webinars like this, it could be campaign support, it could be our directory. We're working on a new clearinghouse tool for people to share and exchange information. That's basically all we do, is we provide these services, and you can contact me anytime and connect with other people in the network as well for support. And so the folks that are Julian and Debbie are both part of the network, and so they have a great presentation, and so I'm here to help connect the dots with that and bring it to you. So without further ado, I'm going to step back, kind of move to the next slide here. Welcome, everybody, and we're going to jump into the agenda. Oh, but I have a couple of logistics here. As you can see, that you can use the chat in real time. If you have any questions, there's a questions area right below at the kind of center middle of the screen. It says ask a question. And so when you ask a question there, we can go to it at the end of the presentation. That in our agenda, we're going to kind of bounce down to the Q&A at the end. You can email me, ryan@halttheharm.net, and today's discussion will be recorded as well. So Julian is going to go up first, then Debbie, and the Q&A. So let's unfocus the screen for a minute. How's it going, Julian and Debbie? Welcome.
Very well, thank you.
Hi, Ryan.
So if somebody, I see Ron, you say there's an echo. Sorry about that. That might kind of come and go. And one way you can solve that is by refreshing your screen. And I will respond to technical stuff in the chat as we kind of go through the webinar. But I'm going to get out of the way here and pass it over to Julian.
Okay.
So thanks so much, Debbie and Julian, for coming on and taking time this evening.
All right, Ryan, thanks for having us. And I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see my slides. And
Welcome, Shelley from Idaho. It's great. We have a fantastic turnout from all over.
Ryan, can you see my slides?
I can.
Oh,
Yeah.
great. Okay. I wasn't sure because my screen just went away with the exception of my slides. So, so I'm going to just roll through here.
Awesome. I'll speak up if anything happens.
Okay, please do. Thanks. Okay, so this is the part of the webinar on how to navigate state and local government. We have a resource page at the middle of the presentation you'll see, and Ryan said this is going to be recorded so you can grab those resources later for you, but we felt like there were some important resources that would be important for folks to know after the webinar. So don't hesitate to look at those resources and email us with questions if you have any later. But this part of the webinar is how to navigate state and local government. And one of the reasons why we chose this presentation is because part of this is with a resource Reserves Organizing ABCs, A Guide to Protecting Schools and Communities from Shale Gas Development. And so sometimes the best way to get the information you need to participate at the local government level, or to participate at a state process where they're permitting something near your home, the best way to get it is to get this information. In order to do that, you need to know how to navigate the system. So that's what I'm going to talk about first. So the first thing is knowing your state laws. And, this doesn't just apply to Pennsylvania. So the Freedom of Information Act generally provides that any person has the right to request access to federal agency records or information. And most states have adopted this act of their own and have their own public records laws. And for instance, in Pennsylvania, we have the right to know law. And we're going to use Pennsylvania as kind of the example here today, but just note that I have a slide that kind of shows you or tells you how you can find out this information for your state, because it's pretty much just the tips of what you need to know, and then you can find out what is the pertaining information for your state specifically. So how do you find information that you need? So there are local, county, and state public records in Pennsylvania. That's called the right to know request. And that's where you can, any state, county, or local agency or government has to follow this right to know law. And so that's where you can obtain records from these agencies in order to, maybe it's a problem that you're having with an environmental issue. This doesn't just pertain to oil and gas. This pertains to really any environmental issue that may arise that's happening near your home. And you want to know if the government has heard about this or reacted to it or responded to it in the past, or if they're responding to a complaint now. And then there's also the state environmental records. So for us, this would be the state environmental protection. So this would be the DEP, PADEP, and they have an informal file review quest where you can request files informally without doing a right to know request, and then get some of those records within a certain amount of time. But there's also a right to know that they are subject to as well. So we're going to talk about the differences there. And I have some great examples for you guys. So know your state guidelines and deadlines. This is super important because when you put in a right to know request, you have to understand what the guidelines are and what the deadline is, because you want to mark your calendar. We're gonna kind of reinforce that tip over and over again, but make sure you understand what the guidelines are and the deadline, because you have to pick the agency that you want the info from. Make sure you use the appropriate form, whether it's a form that you received online, whether you call the office and request the form by mail, whatever the case may be, you have to use a specific form for a specific agency. Everyone has their own. And then find out what the deadlines are. If you contact the agency directly, find out then and there what they are, so you're not guessing later, well, gosh, they didn't respond. How long do they have to respond? And really be specific in your request. So make sure that you tell them exactly what you're looking for. And so with the example of Pennsylvania, the agency must respond within 5 days. If they do not respond, you have 15 days to file an appeal. And I have a friend, he requested documents from a local government, and they did not reply. They did not fulfill that request. And because he didn't file an appeal within 15 days, he had to refile that request again. So it can get really daunting, and really you think that you're just spinning your wheels. It can get frustrating, which is one of the reasons why we decided to do this webinar, because we wanted to try to take out some of that frustration for folks and guide them to the right direction on how to get documents so they don't feel frustrated and they don't feel like they're spinning their wheels. So if they don't respond within the 5 days, you have 15 days to appeal. Usually the agency will request a time extension. There usually is a form that they'll send out automatically within those 5 days saying, please give us 30 days which is standard, to review and respond to this request. And that's completely reasonable. So what do you ask for? Be specific. You have to name dates, specific dates, places, times, parties involved, and what records you want. And be sure to use keywords too. So let's say you want information about a company that has plans to do business in your community, and you want to know what's going to be happening near your home. You could specifically ask for, within the years of 2015 and 2019, any and all records that took place with the involving the party, let's say, for example, Huntley & Huntley and Energy Exploration LLC. That's one of the companies that we have here. And so what they would do is they would type in those keywords. And so you may not know that there's a party involved with the document, but because you're asking for those keywords specifically, they have to give you those records. So as a sample, this is actually a right to know request that we submitted, and you can see the language here. And I also am going to give you the tip, make sure you document everything and back up your documentation. So always keep a copy for yourself. And so this request, we were asking for documents that were discussed at a planning commission meeting. And we wanted to see those documents so we could comment on these documents and give recommendations to the planning commission. So we asked for any additional comments from the Murraysville consultants that were submitted on the specific date. So we went to the hearing, we wrote down the dates when these documents were presented to the local government, and we asked for them specifically. We asked for any related documents to the application for the specific well pad. And then if you look down here below, this box down here, it says, I'd also like to include a note of urgency, because we needed to get these documentations so we could have time to look at them, to make a comment, and to send that comment to the local government before they made their recommendations to the governing board. So again, if you have a hearing that's coming up and you need this information for a hearing, make sure you communicate that well to the agency. Here's another sample that we wanted to share with you. This is for an impoundment, and we wanted any and all records for this impoundment. And this is actually an informal file review request from the DEP. And again, they have their own form, so we use their form, but we always keep a copy for ourselves of this is exactly what we requested. So in this case, we requested all permits relating to this impoundment. We requested all inspection records. We requested, and this is something that hasn't been built before. So in their permit, let's say they had a deficiency somewhere. They forgot to put something in the permit that they were supposed to put in. We're asking for technical deficiency letters too. So in this case, this has really helped us in hearings, because using those technical deficiency letters, it really puts a black eye sometimes on the industry if they didn't put everything in their report that they should have. And maybe they didn't give those documents to the local government too. And those are questions that are left kind of hanging out there. So we want to make sure we get all those records and then use them for whatever we need to use them for. Okay, and so what are the next steps afterwards? And I'm going through everything so quickly. So if you have questions, please put them up there. But I want to make sure I give everybody time to more. What do you do if you don't get what you asked for? Well, first you'd file an appeal with the agency who oversees that law. And we've done this before. And one thing that's really important, like I said, is communicate your expectations with the party. Let's say, we received a file, we received a right to know request, and we had asked for specific documents. And when we went to go scan in the documents at the local government, they had only included some emails from some parties. And we said, Mr. Manager, we expected all documents pertaining to this particular person, not just documents from one person, which it was him. He provided his emails, and he didn't provide any documentation that he had asked we had all board members, local board members that had been involved in communications. We had asked for any and all solicitors or any lawyers that they had, or consultants that they had employed that may have been involved in those communications. And all we got were his emails, because that was easy for him to get. And sometimes you're not going to have emails from other parties, but you at least have to have documentation that you asked for those emails. So what typically happens is when we ask our local government for, any and all records pertaining to such and such, we get a response. The manager says, hey, so-and-so local government leader, did you have any emails? And he asked all 5 board members, do you have emails? And then I see the responses that those 5 board members gave to him, so I know that he asked. And in this case, I knew that the manager did not ask, and I said, my expectation is that you would fulfill this properly and fulfill it as a whole. And I don't see a lot of things here that I was expecting to see, and these were the things I was expecting to see. So phone conversations don't count either. And conversations in person. I had that conversation with him, and then when I went back to my office, I actually emailed him and said, per our conversation, this is what I'm expecting, this is what you missed, this is what you did not provide, and this is how many days you have to do that, or I will be taking the next steps to appeal this request. And so that gave him a clear understanding of what I expected and how he can fulfill the request. And so always write it down, because a conversation can be denied. And here are some just overall best practices. Save a copy of everything for your records. Make sure you mark dates on your calendar. When did you request the records? When are you expecting those records or a response by? When do you have to appeal by if you don't have that response as requested? Know what your next steps are. Know what the deadlines are, whether it's 15 days, whether it's 30 days, and be courteous. Sometimes local governments don't have a lot of this communication with people. Maybe this is the first time that they've had to deal with a request. So sometimes it's about educating them as well. And so getting frustrated sometimes isn't the best way to deal with this situation. I always say you catch more flies with honey. So if you are courteous and just say, this is what I expected and I don't see it, when can I expect it? That way you're communicating with them well, and you're not, you're giving them an opportunity to do the right thing. So what happens if you don't live in Pennsylvania? Because I use that as an example. So some ways that you can find your state info is search for open records, search for public documents, how to find public documents, call your state or local agencies or offices, and then there's an online guide listed in our resources, which is resource number 4. Okay, here are our resources that we talked about in the first section of the presentation, but then I'm going to go ahead and quickly move on to how to document and complaints and reports for environmental issues. So let's say you experience something that you can see in this picture, dust coming out of a sand chute. This was at a fracking well pad near in our township. And so let's say you see this dust and you want to complain to the Environmental Protection Agency and say, this is wrong. I know this is wrong. This is impacting my health, or maybe I can see something that's not right. How do I do that? So what are you documenting? Is it an industrial site around you? Is it a waste impoundment? Is it a pipeline or a compressor station? Freshwater impoundment? Is it a spill or a truck that is releasing fluids and they're not supposed to be? Is it a train that's parked outside your home and idling for 5 hours and they're not supposed to be doing that? What are you documenting? What senses are being impacted? And Debbie, in her part of the webinar, she's going to talk about the health impacts, but these are things that are like really, your sight, your vision, your smell, your taste, your touch. So what senses are being impacted? And where this is really important, if there's a sign for a company near where you are, what's the company's name? Make sure you write it down. Make sure you write down the street address or the postal address of where you are, or get GPS coordinates. Let's say you're walking in the woods on a beautiful day and you stumble across what you think might be an exposed pipeline or an abandoned well. Those are things that you want to report to the DEP. So, get out your phone and you look at your GPS coordinates. I always take a screenshot of my phone with my GPS little app on. That way I have documentation of when I was there, what coordinates I was at the time that I witnessed it, and then you can take pictures of what you're noticing, what you're seeing there. If it's a truck, get license plate numbers. If you don't know if it's by a stream and you don't know the stream name, take pictures and coordinates, and then go on a map when you get home and try to find it. But at least you'll have the coordinates, you'll have the street names of where you were, so you can contact the proper authorities. And landmarks are also important. Okay, so how do you document things properly? I kind of talked about this a little bit as we were going, but take pictures. A lot of us have cell phones now where we have cameras, smartphones. Take pictures of what's going on. Let's say you see bubbles in a stream and you're not quite sure what's going on, or you see what looks like clay or foam in a stream. Take pictures of it so you can report it, and you can give those pictures to the agency. Report a sound if you hear something. Again, if it's something that is an emergency, always call 911 for emergencies. If you think it's an emergency, call 911. If not, DEP has a 24-hour hotline right now, and so you can call DEP whenever. Here in Pennsylvania, I'm not sure about other states, but have those. We always like to have a list of those numbers available. That way, people know who to call when something happens. Keep a journal. So if you talk to somebody on the phone, make sure you get their name, make sure you get their email address, the time, write down the time you call, write down the date that you called, write down the approximate, like what you talked about, and then follow that up with an email. Because if it was a conversation on the phone or in person, that is not documented. So you have to follow up with an email. And so you also want to take timestamp photos if you can. Now phones do that for you. Note weather conditions, because weather conditions can impact pollution. So let's say it's a really cold, snowy day. There might be a weather inversion, and that's why this pollution's kind of sticking in the air near your home. And so that is something that's important to note. If it's something like smoke, you can also note, which is not on the slide, you can note the color of the smoke and also the opacity of the smoke. That's important too. And write down the dates and times. Okay, and then file a report. This is really, really important. This is very crucial that you file a report with the correct agency. You get a report number or a reference number. I can't stress enough. This is vitally important. And you tell them that you want to file a formal complaint or report. There are some agencies, if you don't say those exact words, I want to file a formal complaint or report, they will not file it. And then here's how you look to make sure that they did. You use the first part of what I just taught you in the first part of the webinar to do a right to know request or a file review and get those documents. And you can check on them to make sure they're doing what they should be doing. Because when you do get that file review, you'll actually see your complaint in that file. And make sure you follow up on your report. So if if there's something that's bothering you near your home, you're being exposed to something and you think it's harming you, make sure you follow up. And again, document all those follow-up calls. It's vitally important because then you won't be frustrated and spinning your wheels And you can say, no, Mr. So-and-so, on such and such date, I called you and we talked about this, and this is what we talked about. And you told me that you were going to send someone out, and I have all of this documented. So I would expect that you do your job. So those are some things that, sometimes when you're spinning your wheels and you've done all those, things the right way, and you need to get some action, there are other ways you can get that action just by following up. And if you have any questions, you can always contact us. Anne is my assistant, Anne at protectpt.org, or Julian at protectpt.org. And there's our website. We've got tons of tips and things on our website. So please join us, and here are also some additional resources for you in Pennsylvania: the oil and gas mapping website, National Pipeline System, FEMA. There's just a lot of resources online out there for you to utilize. So that is the last of my presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Ryan right now.
Hey, thanks so much, Julian. I think it got a little dark over here in my side of the neck of the woods here, but yeah, thank you so much, Julian. And if anybody has questions, make sure to use the questions area below so we can get into the Q&A session after Debbie is ready, or Debbie completes her portion of the presentation. All right. How's it going, Debbie?
It's going really well.
I'm going to mute myself so there's no echo. And
Can you see my screen?
not yet. No.
What did I do wrong? Hang on.
There we go. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Shannon, for mentioning that. The Fact Tracker app. I wonder how, yeah, I'm curious to know how that is for documenting other things besides just. So yeah, here's the link, everyone, if you want to check it out. Cool, Debbie, I can see the slideshow great. So
Okay.
it's good to go.
Well, thank you, Ryan and Jillian. I have a bit of an echo. Hopefully that'll go away. I work for the Southwest PA Environmental Health Project, as Ryan said, and just to give you a little bit of a background, the Environmental Health Project, or EHP, came into being in 2012 as a public health response to shale gas development in Pennsylvania. We are a nonprofit public health organization that assists and supports residents of southwestern PA and beyond who believe their health has been or could be impacted by shale gas development. The advice we impart applies broadly to other sources of environmental exposure as well. Is everyone else hearing an echo?
I am, and if you have other tabs open, maybe if you have a duplicate tab for the webinar, or but you don't have to exit this screen share. But one way you can do it too is turn down the volume on your computer. Thanks, Nick, for pointing that out. It might be, usually there's an echo if there's like another, sometimes the webinar is open in 2 tabs at once.
Okay. Hang on.
Yeah, we'll get it fixed.
Should I close this one? Okay, is that better?
Shannon points out that it makes you sound epic. It's still echoing. Is it possible that you have another tab open?
It is. Let me just jump out of present for a second.
Okay, great. Oh yeah, it looks like you have one more be informed, prepared, and there we go.
Okay, are you still there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, sounds great now.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks.
Am I still shared? You can see me, right?
Yep, it looks good. Get into perfect.
All right.
Good to go. Yeah.
All right. So
Thanks,
today I'm
Sharon.
going to cover pathways of environmental exposure, documenting exposure, and tips on how to talk to your healthcare provider. And this is our team at EHP. First off, it's important to understand what environmental exposure is. So environmental exposure is coming into contact with pollutants in areas where you live, work, and play. Pollutants may be carried in the air, in the water, or be in the soil, dust, and dirt on the ground. You may experience environmental exposures both indoors and outside. Environmental exposure covers pollution from industry and farming, but also pesticides, fertilizers, cleaning products, paints, and other materials that we may use on our properties and in our homes. Environment here just refers to your immediate surroundings. Now, there are different pathways of exposure, which may determine what, if any, symptoms you exhibit. Pathways of exposure are breathing pollution in from the air into our lungs, drinking or eating contaminated water or food, and then skin contact. In addition, each person's body may react differently to an exposure. People with compromised immune systems or lung function, developing fetuses, children, and the elderly may be more vulnerable and may exhibit symptoms before healthy adults. Workers experiencing prolonged exposure may also be more vulnerable. Then, how severe is the exposure? How long were you exposed and how often? How toxic is the pollutant and how close are you to the source? Distance from the source may change how concentrated pollutants are. So if you think your health or that of your family is impacted, it is very important that you are able to communicate this to your healthcare provider. EHP's handout, Tips for Talking to Your Healthcare Provider, walks you through this process. This handout is available for download on our website. And although EHP focuses specifically on shale gas development, the advice here applies broadly to other types of environmental exposures as well. So some general tips. Healthcare providers are often not very versed in looking for environmental exposures as a cause for symptoms. So as Julian stressed in her presentation, documentation is key. It is important to create and to bring a health diary with you to your appointment. We will discuss how to keep a health diary in a minute, but it is very important that you write down your concerns and take them with you to your visit. Bring up your main concerns at the beginning of your appointment. Do not wait until the end when your healthcare provider is beginning to wrap up the appointment. This way, the appointment can be focused on your concerns. Don't worry about concerns seeming trivial. Bring up anything that concerns you and let your healthcare provider decide, because sometimes it's a combination of symptoms that lead to a diagnosis. Take someone with you to your appointment to help you keep track or take notes of what your healthcare provider recommends. Take notes yourself or ask for written notes from your provider about your appointment. In addition, ask your healthcare provider to record your concerns in your health record. Once again, have them documented. And don't be afraid to ask questions you might have. So how do you maintain a health diary? Pay attention to health symptoms, and not just your symptoms, but everyone sharing your environment. It may be useful to have separate diaries for each person to make healthcare provider visits easier. A health diary is a way for you to keep track of patterns in your health and the factors that might affect it, particularly if you live near an industrial site. Keeping a health diary may help you and your healthcare provider determine if there are connections between your environmental conditions and your health. And be sure to take your health diary to all healthcare appointments. There are many options available to record your health details. You can write in a notebook or a journal. You can use an online health diary or smartphone app, or you can use EHP's tracking sheet on the back of Tips for Talking to Provider as a sample method of tracking that. It's best to update your health diary every day, but be sure to use it anytime you notice a change in your health conditions or a change in environmental conditions. For each entry, be sure to write down the following. First off, date and time. Try to be specific, as you may be able to associate your symptoms with timing of releases in your environment, like maybe an accident resulting in a spill or a fire. Keep close track of your symptoms. Some may seem very minor to you, but they may reflect short-term or acute symptoms of chemical exposure, such as a headache, a nosebleed, or a rash that are sudden in onset. These may be warning signs of exposure. Long-term or chronic symptoms may result from prolonged or frequent environmental exposures and may take years to develop. Such symptoms tend to be much more serious, such as permanent neurological effects, chronic asthma, and cancer. Think of the short-term symptoms as the canary in the coal mine. So, what are your symptoms? When did they start? And have they changed, better or worse? Have you self-treated your symptoms, and how? For nosebleeds, headaches, breathing problems, or other issues potentially associated with industrial activity, keep track of what the symptoms are, how long they last, and whether they occur indoors or outdoors. If you have a skin condition, it might also be helpful to take a picture. And once again, have the picture show the date and time. Some pollutants are endocrine disruptors, meaning they affect how hormones are able to operate in the body, and may be particularly harmful during growth and development, such as for fetuses and children. Pollutants such as benzene, toluene, ethylbenzene, and xylenes are examples of such chemicals. Prolonged or frequent exposure may be harmful even in low doses. Another reason to be aware of possible exposure in your environment and to take steps to limit that exposure. Symptoms like stress, physical, psychological, or psychosocial may also be related to environmental exposure and should be noted in your health diary. Many things related to your environment can cause stress, such as continuous noise, bright lights at night, concern about your family's health, and tensions between community members about the costs and benefits of an industrial source in the community. Stress is two-pronged in its health impacts in that it affects both mental and physical health. Chronic or long-term stress can weaken the immune system and lead to serious physical health problems, such as increases in blood pressure, muscle tension, and digestive problems, to name a few. It is very important that you include stressors in your diary and in your conversations with your healthcare provider. So, what are your environmental conditions? Have you had life changes, or has the environment where you live, worked, and played changed? Record changes in water quality, such as color, odor, taste, or residue. Also note any changes in air quality in and around your home, such as odors or fine dust collecting on windows. You should also keep track of changes in industrial activities near your home. For example, as with shale gas, it may be something like increased truck traffic or a new drilling site, or any increases in light or noise pollution. Some pollution, as with the shale gas industry, may be episodic, not continuous. So oftentimes symptoms are as well. By recording the timing of symptoms, you may be able to link it to timing of activities at nearby industrial sites. This chart shows pollution levels for night, morning, afternoon, and evening over 7 days. As you can see, pollution levels may vary significantly, even over a 24-hour period. Proximity, or how close you are, matters. Pay attention to sources of possible pollution exposures near where you work, live, and play. These may be visible or invisible, have an odor or not. Pay attention to any industrial infrastructure and activity in your area. If you do not know what something is or what it is emitting, do some research, and ask questions. In addition, as Julian said, local weather conditions can affect how pollution travels through the air and may affect levels of exposure and aggravate certain health problems like allergies and asthma. Keep notes on cloud cover, temperature, rain, whether it's light, moderate, or strong, and wind, the general direction and speed. This color-coded chart is a simple guide to let you know when to keep your windows closed. For example, on a sunny day with any or no wind, the air is heated by the sun and will rise and take pollution with it. So that would be a good day to open your windows. But when there is little or no wind and the air is cooling, especially such as at night, air will settle around your house, concentrating any pollution it is carrying. This would be a good time to keep your windows closed. Another factor to take into account is the lay of the land, or the topology near where you live, work, and play. If you live in a depression or a river valley, note that pollution will concentrate in low-lying areas when the air is settling. So to recap, write down your concerns and take them with you to your visit with your healthcare provider. Take someone with you to your appointment and keep a copy of the appointment notes with your health diary. And last but not least, bring up your main concerns at the beginning of your appointment, not at the end when your healthcare provider is thinking about their next appointment. So if you think that your health or that of your family are impacted by environmental exposure, it is imperative that you call your state and local departments of health and to ask to file a formal complaint. And remember, as Julian said, make sure that they give you a number to track it so you can call them back and reference it or request it. In addition, if it is pollution that you think is affecting your water, land, or air, also call your state's Department of Environmental Protection to file a formal complaint. EHP has many resources that may be useful to you related to environmental exposure. Two that you may want to download are Protecting Your Health, which gives tips on reducing outdoor pollution indoors, and Where to Turn Resource Guide, which is actually primarily Pennsylvania-based, but has contact information for many national organizations as well. So the more you know about possible exposures in your environment, the better equipped you are to take steps to protect you and your family's health. You can visit EHP's website or contact us for more information. Thank you, and let us know if you have any questions.
Thanks, Debbie.
You're welcome. How do I close it?
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, and you have all these links as well that we can share after the webinar, I believe, right?
Yes, I just have to remember how to unshare.
And Maria, yes. You actually, right here at this URL is where the replay will show up as soon as we end this broadcast. So, and if there are questions that you have that you want to add to the queue right in the center, we're about to go to the Q&A session here. And yeah.
There we go.
Awesome. So let's see here. Fantastic. So it looks like there's a couple questions in the chat. Just Frac Tracker doesn't show all drilling east of Cheyenne, Wyoming for me. Does anyone know why? That's a good question. Do you
I do not have an answer for that.
So I would say,
so one thing.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Oh, no, go ahead.
So I would say the best thing to do would be to contact Frac Tracker and directly and ask them if there's a way to get that information, or you could probably contact the state agency and see if you can find information there.
And Frac Tracker they have like a little contact beacon on their website right in the bottom right. And so you can actually use that to drop that question in there, and that'll create a support ticket. And that's actually the new help center that we've been working on. So it'll be a chance to check that out too. Cool. And Chris is asking, Debbie, where could we find the document images regarding weather conditions and when to open windows? Thank you.
Okay, that is on our website, which is environmentalhealthproject.org. And you can go under residents, and then there's a tab for fact sheets and other documents. And there's we have a set of documents called EHIP, Advancing Health. And underneath that, you will find Protecting Your Health, that handout. And under that, you will find the infographic for the weather.
Oh, great. Thank you. I just posted this link in the chat so everyone can hop over to that fact sheet area.
We also have information on our website as well. We have some things similar. And you can find that on, I believe it's Fracking in Your Neighborhood. So go to protectpt.org and you can find a ton of information, including some of the information we shared today on our website.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Julian. I'm going to go to the questions area and just kind of go through them one by one, starting at the bottom. So thanks Chris for bringing that up. And so now we have a question from William. The Atlantic Coast pipeline pipes have been stored in the sun for 3 years, and the 3M Scotch Coat Fusion bonded epoxy 6233 exterior corrosion protection coating is chalking off the pipes and escaping into the environment. The MSDs for this coating show carcinogenic, mutagenic, and toxic materials. I think it is likely that this material is being inhaled and ingested through well and spring drinking water sources. Virginia government will not respond. Any suggestions?
That's a great question. So what I would do first is document all of that. Document the pipes, document any signs of flaking or any signs of water contamination. Take pictures of all this. And one thing you can do is contact someone at the EPA. So in certain states, if the state agency has jurisdiction to enforce certain rules, they should be doing so. But if they're not doing so, like they are not doing so in Pennsylvania, we've actually just contacted the Attorney General in Pennsylvania. So there should be some type of Attorney General or Auditor General or Inspector General that you could contact, potentially your county district attorney, and give them this documentation. One thing that I'd also note, as I was reading that comment, I was thinking, well, if those chemicals are in the sun, not only are they, getting being exposed to air and water, but also the heat from the chemicals may be changing those chemical compounds. That can also be an issue as well. And sometimes, as I've learned from working with EHP a lot, is that when chemicals get together and, things like heat can change those chemicals, you now have exposure to something new that is different than exposure to just one of those chemicals. You have exposure to this kind of chemical cocktail, which is never a good thing. So document it and try to get some help either with the Attorney General, the District Attorney, or the EPA. But that is a major problem.
Mm-hmm. Great. The next question from Kathy. Is it possible that the form Rs under SARA right to know could be requested for that company to see if they are acknowledging the presence of that chemical with its CAS number. And correct me if I got any of that question wrong. Oh, okay. So Kathy's clarified, giving the answer to the previous question. Okay. Thanks, Kathy.
Nice.
Lewis asks, the OOR agreed with my appeal to the municipal government, but the MUNI decided to have the appeal that I won undergo judicial review. How long can they make me wait on this?
That's a good question, Lois. I would talk to your attorney and find out if there is some kind of movement on this. We deal with sometimes 5 and 6 cases at a time. And sometimes it's about staying in touch with your attorney on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis to find out what kind of movement has been happening in that case. And if you're not seeing any movement in that case, then I'm sure that there are other things that you could do. I'm not familiar with going through the process of a judicial appeal like that. I know that I have appealed things with the Office of Open Records before and actually received the documents that I wanted. And when I went through that appeal, it was with a state attorney, kind of oversaw that process. So potentially contact a state attorney that has been working with that process with you and ask them when you can expect to see some type of result in that case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Lois just added a few things into the chat as well on that, Julian. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah. And also, just so everybody knows, that you can actually leave comments in the Q&A section below as well, where it says ask a question. So if you see questions in there that you want to upvote or respond to. So great. I'm going to go to another question here. So Reverend Dr. Sharon Kiesel, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, says, is it wise to involve the media? And if so, when?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think that public pressure can be a very effective technique, and using the media is a great way to do that. So absolutely, I would definitely use the media if you have to. A lot of news stations have reporters that specifically deal with certain either consumer complaints or environmental complaints. Absolutely. In fact, Mariner East 2 has been a big issue in this state, and it's getting a tremendous amount of media coverage, and we had a letter writing campaign to go along with our AG's, our Attorney General letter, and we've had some movement happen recently, and some fines imposed on. There have been some fines imposed for penalties that industry had pending, and we think that the state responded because they knew that we were watching them, and they knew that other people were watching them too.
I want to add that there are some great resources available on like tips for when speaking to the media, just to make sure that you're getting your points across and that it's not getting construed. And that's just worth noting. I think that sometimes the reporters will have their own angle that they're kind of trying to push. And so it can be helpful to be able to like bring it back to the topic and kind of have your, if you're trying to make a point, to stick to it so that you can't just be framed as, somebody who's just complaining about something, when it's actually a legitimate concern that you need to raise.
Ryan, do you have, did we ever do a webinar on that? Or do you have tips or resource that you could link there? Because I think that's really important too.
Yeah, I think we should definitely plan a webinar. If anybody's listening, or even if you're watching the replay and you have any tips, to please get in touch with us and recommend a resource. I've been to webinars on the topic. That's why I spoke up. But I think that would be a great idea. I found that the trainings that I've had the opportunity to go to around talking to the media have been really, really impactful. Just the takeaways that I get from, understanding how to get a point across. Yeah. Next question. Let's see. All right. Monica asks, on the air quality near shale gas sites slide, why is a calm night highlighted in blue to indicate it's very unhealthy air quality?
Well, generally, because there's no air movement really, right? So you don't have any air moving out of the region. It's just settling. And because it's night and you no longer have the sun beating on the earth and warming that air and causing that air to rise, it's settling. And it's going to settle into the lowest spaces really as it cools. And so any pollution that air is carrying then is going to settle with it. And cold air is going to be denser than warm air, and it's going to therefore sort of condense the pollution with it. So on a calm night, as the air settles around your house, if there's pollution in that air, it's going to be more concentrated in that time. So if you open your windows, that air is going to come in.
And I've included a link here. If you go to this link on Protect PT's website, we have, this is based on the air quality index from the EPA, and we have some of the explanations that Debbie just was good enough to kind of talk about. We have some of those explanations here. We also have a downloadable fact sheet that kind of talks about that as well. And if you can't find that information, let me know. I'd be happy to mail you one of our fact sheets that kind of goes over my research to make sure we were giving the right information.
Awesome. Thank you. So Rebecca's saying, I'd suggest reporting any oil and gas spill or release of gas via blowdown, etc., to the federal agency National Response Center, in addition to reporting to a state agency. The federal NRC is a transparent database where state databases are not transparent and cannot be searched as the federal database can. That comes in from Rebecca.
And I'm looking, I thought we had the number listed on another one of our websites here, another one of our sites here. And I see Ann is on. And if you wouldn't mind looking up that number and just typing it in here in the chat, I agree with that statement. I think that we should call the national response. And we have done so in a mercaptan spill, and the operator was actually just fined $165,000 for that and other violations that occurred over a couple-year period.
That's actually on one of the last slides in my presentation that comes off of, we actually have, and that's is also under Enhancing Health and PA on our website, but we have a little card the size of a business card, but it's folded over, that has a lot of numbers that you would call for different types of health and or environmental emergencies.
And I love those cards that EHP has, because you can stick one in your wallet and keep it with you. So let's say you're out walking in the woods or hiking somewhere and you see something, you have those numbers right at your fingertips. So, definitely contact EHP for those, and keep one in your wallet.
Okay, it will also, my coworker is going to put the link up, so you'll be able to see what the link for that particular file is.
Great.
It'll be under Jessa.
Great. There's going to be a lot of really good resources and links shared for this webinar. That's awesome. John is asking, does the state defer to the Fed because of interstate commerce? If so, should the state be in control if the gas is drilled in the state and moved in the state to a cracker plant, which changes the gas to plastic? This relates to the state always deferring to the Halliburton loophole?
So I would say if it's extracted in the state, that the state agency would regulate that part of the process. If it's going through a pipeline, pipelines are a little bit different. It depends on what agency is overseeing that pipeline. If it's a pipe that goes from one state to another, there are separate agencies like FERC that are responsible for dealing with those pipelines versus if it's in the state. It could be if it's just a small pipeline in your community, it could be your conservation district, your county conservation district, or the DEP. So again, one thing we talked about is finding the right agency. And sometimes that's just about phone calls, making the phone call to find the right agency. And Ryan had mentioned the Center for Health, Environment, and Justice, or someone had mentioned that in the chat for that information and on messaging, and that they also have resources on pipelines as well. And I want to say Frac Tracker has some of that information too, but that information's out there and can be made available if you look for it. And if you can't find it, let me know and I'll try to help you find it.
Awesome. So that's it for the questions, and it's 8:04 p.m. So we've just, we've gotten to the end of our time today. I want to thank everybody so much for coming, and thank you, Debbie and Julian, for your presentations today.
And thank you, Ryan, for facilitating.
Yeah. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, and it's been fantastic to plan this with you, and the value that you're bringing, and that so many people were able to attend from so many places, and then we're going to be able to have this replay available as well. So everybody that's watching this right now, you can share this recording, and help get this information out there. But also, we're going to make sure to post the links here in the chat so that it can kind of live on, but then we'll also make sure to email you the replay link and all the resources. We have some homework to do tonight, I think, to get that together. So yeah, thanks, Shelley, John, Gail, Luis. It's great to see so many people, sticking through all the way to the end of a program on a Wednesday evening.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And I hope this helps out in whatever your environmental issues are.
I want to invite everybody that's here to join Halt the Harm Network, because by being part of, and I'll send you some emails about Halt the Harm as well after the webinar, since you registered. So you'll continue to get invites to webinars. You can always unsubscribe. We don't send spam. We only send things that we think will be relevant and interesting to you. But I do want to invite you to join the directory, because as a member of the directory, you're able to connect with other people based on your interests and based on skills that you want to offer to the network. That halttheharm.net is the website where you can find out about the different services that are available to leaders in the network. And then you can also find the entire archive of webinars. And so that answers your question, Kathy. Yes, absolutely. And you can actually see past webinars as well. So yeah, thank you, Ned. And yeah, and if you have any questions at all about Halt the Harm and getting involved in the network, giving a presentation, suggesting a topic, please reach out to me anytime. I'm here to offer support. I'm a technical support person. It's what I love to do. So I look forward to hearing from everybody.
Bye.
Have a great night. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.